Rich, we're facing a dilemma of sorts in the sports world, and it's been going on for years, but I think we're more sensitive to it now than ever because of the access people have to information, social media, and the way sports are covered now, in that we have to face these issues of players who are certainly not role models, who have legal issues, who have moral issues, who commit crimes, yet still play sports, that are still on the leagues, that are still in the video games we play. And this subject has been coming up over the past few years, mostly in football. And it's because EA Sports has done some things to players who have gotten into trouble before. And we have more of these situations arising lately. And the latest is Greg Hardy, which we've known about for a year. We've had all the details, but the pictures and some more of the police reports and court transcripts came out. And so that wound kind of got opened up again. And it brought to mind a question that I posed on Twitter, which was, do publishers have any sort of obligation to remove a player or de-emphasize them within the games, or, for lack of a better word, punish them? It's not really a punishment, but to take a stand against something they've done within the video games that represent these sports. Now, EA has done this in the past. Aaron Hernandez, arrested for murder. They removed him from not only Madden, but NCAA football that year, which was introducing its Ultimate Team, and he was going to be in the Ultimate Team. They yanked him out, and that happened in the offseason. They were able to get him out before the game even came out. Last year, Ray Rice, the video of him assaulting his wife, comes out, and he gets suspended for 2 games, ends up getting cut by the Ravens. EA, not only do they take him out of the roster, which is not the norm for a free agent, for a guy who was just cut. They take him completely out of the roster, but they took him out of Ultimate Team. People who had him on their Ultimate Teams logged in to see it's no longer Ray Rice. It's a silhouette that says Baltimore halfback. Okay? They cut all ties to Ray Rice. He hasn't been back in the game since as a free agent because he hasn't signed with anybody. So there's precedent here. Adrian Peterson last year and Greg Hardy also were put on the commissioner exempt list in real life NFL, and in the game they weren't removed. They were just dropped down the depth chart essentially as inactive players. So there's different ways of approaching this, and I got a lot of feedback for the question, and I'd say about a quarter of the people. There's a lot of replies. About a quarter of the people said they think something should be done, whether that's take them out of the game, drop their ratings, or one suggestion that I liked was leave them in the normal part of the game, in the normal roster, because they're just a player, but don't basically celebrate them in other modes like Ultimate Team. They don't need to be in there, or Draft Champions. They don't need to be in there. It's kind of modes where individual takes precedence over team. So there's reason for people to express that, and I think there's a lot of people have, everyone's going to have a different viewpoint on what's wrong morally and what they can put up with. And I was curious, Rich, where do you stand on this? Do you think there's any moral obligation to do anything about these players within the video games, or is it just a video game and we need to get over it and just enjoy it for what it is as a video game?
It's very easy when it's not your decision to say what should be done. Mm-hmm. I'm regularly sort of bemused by people who say, well, it's obvious that X should do Y because of Z, right? Mm-hmm. But when it's not your place, it's not your responsibility, you're not the one who bears the burden of the ramifications of those decisions, it's easy to do that. And this is a great example of that. You're talking about publishers, video game publishers, who have contracts with the leagues, contract with the Players Association, and they can't just, willy-nilly decide on their own who is worthy enough to be in their game or not. Now, having said that, every case is different, right? Aaron Hernandez is different than Tom Brady, right? And people say, well, Tom Brady, what are you talking about? Well, Tom Brady, right, was accused of, and the NFL attempted to suspend him for 4 games for tampering with footballs, right? I'm not comparing the two, but I'm merely saying these are offenses in the eyes of some people, or allegations in the eyes of some people, right? You've got people like Ray Lewis, right, who was accused of and ultimately acquitted of, murder, for crying out loud. But there are plenty of people who feel that wasn't a just decision. And not only is he, I believe, available on Ultimate Team as, a legendary player, but he's also, in the studio, announcing, doing commentary on games as well, right? Then you've got like a situation like Ben Roethlisberger, right? Ben Roethlisberger was, accused of, and I honestly don't remember if it was, acquitted or convicted or
I don't think it was ever charged.
But he was certainly
suspended anyway. Yeah,
right. He was accused of and faced various penalties for some really nasty stuff. Right. Yeah. So I mean, you've got all of these different situations, all of these different players. If you as a video game publisher are trying to mete out justice, right, from your game, you can get into a really strange spot where, well, why is one guy in the game and another guy isn't, and so on. And again, I'm not suggesting that Hardy is on the same plane or not on the same plane as other players, but look, in my opinion, right, the right thing to do for a video game publisher who has contracts with the league and with the National Football League Players Association is to do what they do, right? Because that is the most sim option that they have, right? If Hardy is in the game, then he's probably got to be in the video game, because Ben Roethlisberger is in the video game, right? And it's very difficult to try to figure out player by player who should or shouldn't be in. And if you're trying to do that without following what the league does, it can be difficult. And a lot of people have a lot of problems with the league. I mean, my goodness, how many conversations have there been about Roger Goodell and the terrible handling of the Ray Rice deal? And, now he doesn't even know what to do anymore. It's just like, no matter what he does, he's lost all of his foundation to even do things. So it's a mess, and it's a much bigger picture when it comes to the National Football League in particular, because there's a lot more going on. I think there's a reason that the National Football League in particular has trouble with domestic violence and violent crimes. It's because these players, these guys are barely, I mean, not all of them, but they're, you see it in their eyes, right? Like some of these guys are not even, they're almost like, robots, right? I mean, they're so fueled up, and clearly some of these guys are on, HGH and other PEDs, and they're lined up for violence, their entire life, and the way that they make money is about hitting people hard and about just so focused on being so crushing, right? I mean, and then you put them out in the world. I mean, in many cases, to me, it's not dissimilar from PTSD from soldiers that are experiencing trauma and then coming back. Like, I think some of these guys, and we've seen it historically, right, have real difficult times just being regular human beings. And so I think it's a symptom of a much bigger problem that the National Football League has. And if you, again, as a video game publisher, if you're trying to mete out, well, this guy is out, but this guy is in, well, this thing happened 3 years ago, so that doesn't matter, but this just happened, so it does matter, because of the people thinking of that, that's an almost impossible situation.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think who would make those judgments is one of the biggest complications. But this is ultimately a consumer product, right? So if consumers demanded something, if they demanded that certain actions be taken, then they probably would be listening to that. One example that came to mind was, does a parent want their child playing with controlling Greg Hardy or playing with a team that has Greg Hardy on it. He wins them a game. He becomes a Greg Hardy fan in real life. I mean, just do they want, and it's not just a Greg Hardy thing. Do they want their kids playing a game where they start to idolize certain individuals,
right?
That may not be really beneficial to them or appropriate. So that's one scenario that came to mind as a consumer product.
It's a legitimate scenario, and that's why I say it's very difficult. Like if the NFL tomorrow came out and said that Hardy was no longer, if the Madden team came out tomorrow and said Hardy's out, like I would have no real problem with that. I mean, based upon what Deadspin published and what I've read and heard about it, I mean, it certainly seems like there's a strong case that this guy did some stuff that is really just not what people should be out in the world doing, and he should probably have to pay some sort of a penalty for those alleged crimes, right? So if Madden came out and said he was out of the game, I would have no problem with that. But on the other hand, there would be a lot of hue and cry from football fans, Dallas Cowboy fans in particular, and others that would say, now hold on a second, the guy that was thrown out, right? It was expunged, and now granted the reasons behind that.
It's a weird situation in North Carolina, apparently, where you can get convicted and throw that out and pay somebody off.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the whole thing is strange. But again, at the end of the day, then again, me personally, if Hardy was removed from the game, I wouldn't have that much of a problem with it. But again, it's like, why Hardy and why not the 5 or the 10 other guys who have been accused of and or even convicted of these kind of things that are in the game? It's just, I don't know where it starts and where it ends. And maybe it's a cop-out. It probably sounds like a cop-out. But on the other hand, again, I sort of stay with like it or not, and a lot of us don't like it. You kind of, in my mind, if you want the video game to be true to the real game, you have to sort of follow whether the guys are on the field that week or not in order to establish whether they should be available to play.
One other situation I looked back into was in 2012. So I think things have changed certainly when we got to Aaron Hernandez, the way they approached this change. But in 2012, Jovan Belcher committed murder-suicide. I think it was right in the Chiefs parking lot, if I remember right.
In the parking lot, yep, absolutely.
EA didn't take him out of the game. They left him in. And I remember, and I even Googled it and found a few instances of people saying, I like a month later, I'm playing Madden, and then Jovan Belcher recovers a fumble. How awkward is that? How uncomfortable is that? Just really a difficult situation all around. One thing I do think a publisher like EA can control, though, are the optics of on a little lower level, and that's like this past Friday. The new roster came out, and new Ultimate Team legends were added. So who goes up in the roster update on the same day this stuff breaks about Hardy, the pictures and everything? Greg Hardy goes up 2 points in the roster update. Not really necessary. And then Donovan McNabb is added to Ultimate Team, one of the 2 legends added on the same day that he is sentenced to jail time for his second, I think, DUI. Did they really need to add him in? These are considerations. I think those type of things, I think, as opposed to let's take him out completely. Like the Ultimate Team thing, as I mentioned earlier, that's like a celebration of a player and their history and everything about him. Didn't need to do that. You knew he had just been arrested months ago for DUI, multiple DUIs. Like Fox dropped him as one of their on-air talent guys. Other companies cut the cord with this guy, and yet you're celebrating him by bringing him in. And then Greg Hardy, like, let's just not make him better in the game. Just don't do it. You don't need to do it. Just let's ignore him from now on. That's just the way I look at it. And it's bad timing for EA. Neither of these were planned intentionally, but when you mess around with dangerous players who have a history of stuff, I think you have to be a little more sensitive to how you deal with them.
I completely agree. And on the other hand, after a certain amount of time, people forget about the bad things, and
Well, yeah,
then
they have Michael Vick. That they celebrate Michael Vick.
Exactly
It's just
right.
much,
Yeah.
so.
Right. And even, other sports, guys like, Bob Probert, right? He's a hero in the NHL. But I mean, he had terrible drug problems and ended the careers of several players on the ice because of the actions that he did, But now looking back, after he passed away, it's almost like, he's, oh, remember that guy, Bob Robert, wasn't he a tough guy, or even going back in the history of baseball, there's all sorts of people like Ty Cobb, right? I mean, if Ty Cobb was around today, he would be the most reviled human, public figure there is. Now, obviously, he lived in a very different time, but not only the way he played the game, but also the way that he conducted his life. I mean, so, and again, we're talking about very different things. You're talking about people who kill somebody, right? Who are convicted of murder. You're talking about people who assault women. You're talking about people who get a DWI, right? And that is a very bad thing because you can kill innocent people.
And that happened in the past. Leonard Little, former St. Louis Ram.
Absolutely.
I hated the Rams because he had killed somebody and missed like 2 or 4 games. And then
family,
he was back.
I believe, not just like one person. I think it was a family.
Yeah, it was. That's so it's just man, I'll tell you what.
It's so hard to go through this, and it's almost like if you have to draw a line, well, if they killed somebody or assaulted somebody and above, they're out. But if they're just they got caught doing drugs, or they got DWI, or they were cheating on their spouse, like they can stay in. Like again, it's so difficult when you try to mete out justice, unless it is an Aaron Hernandez situation or even a Ray Rice situation, but even with that, it's extremely difficult. And man, I wouldn't want that job. I'll tell you that right now. I would not want that job because, with the internet and the fact that every person that wants to have a voice can have a voice, there's a lot of outrage that's out there that doesn't accurately reflect how most people feel. But how quickly these things can build up too, So it's an extremely difficult thing, and people feel very passionately about it, as they should. These are good conversations to have, but boy, it sure is it's a tough call to make.